but yeah.
Hey, good
Just
morning,
hit and
Misfits.
miss.
It sounds like
Oh,
some
good morning.
prayers are needed for some folks and some blessings, and we've got some new angels to pray to. It sounds like so blessings on the family.
Yes, thank you.
Let me go ahead and mute this over here. That's muted. All right, hit record here. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, March 1st. There is no February 30th. Hope everybody had an amazing leap year yesterday. It was pretty amazing for me. Some great stuff, some incredible business closeouts for the month. So that was pretty cool. Lots of rank advancements and just cool to see people succeeding and achieving their goals. So that was fun. Yesterday's conversation had us having some incredible dialogue with Brittany and some conversations with Shammy and some different things, and it ended up pretty powerfully, as most of the calls do every day. And then Bob shared, he said, hey, listen, I've got some ideas of a formula, a process, some ideas to share with folks, how to kind of keep the boundaries, the handrails, put a bow on a conversation from yesterday. So we're gonna have that conversation this morning. Let Bob kind of take over here in just a little bit. But as we get started, go ahead and send out your 3 messages this morning. That would be cool. Send out your 3 messages of joy, of gratitude, of love, of support for people who are building their business. And this is day 1, right? This is they can start today. That's the neat thing about sales, is that each month, each start of the month, depending upon how your company pays, each day, each 24 hours, each week, each month, you've got an opportunity to take your business to the next level. So send out some notes of gratitude. There's some of your folks are over in England, right? Maybe wish them some safe travels back home when that event is over. I'm guessing it's probably over maybe today. Maybe they'll start traveling back tomorrow. Some people may be staying over there to have some fun in country. So, but just maybe wish them some safety and some joy and some fun. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. Happy March 1st, everybody. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bob Parks. I see him on here. And Bob, I'll let you have some fun with the show.
Okay, great. With a little luck, it won't go to the birds. If I got to apologize ahead of time because I've got some Canadian geese right outside my window.
Oh, I love it.
And yeah, and hopefully they won't interrupt too much here, but we'll live with it. Over the last week, we've had a number of really great conversations with Brittany and what's her name from England?
Steph,
yeah.
Yep.
And a few others.
And Shammy, and
right.
Just a whole bunch of amazing souls.
Right. And as I was listening to, like, last Sunday, as a matter of fact, I think when Brittany was presenting some challenges, and Sean was deftly leading her into considering, well, okay, she was concerned, for example, about recently having overcome some financial strains, but now she's kind of in a position where she's worrying whether, how am I going to sustain that? How am I going to go forward with that? And in the course of Sean's deftly leading Brittany and Steph to consider things like, well, what happens if you just enter the state of joy, of freedom, as opposed to worrying about the how? And this can go a long ways, but I wanted to offer the opportunity to go a little deeper than that, because I believe both the how and the why work together to get us what we really want. And and also to get us away from those common things that, as Rhonda suggested the other day, instead of looking for going shopping horizontal to different kinds of momentary, temporary satisfaction, that we look a little higher and we go to a higher state. And what I'm going to share with you largely comes from the work of Laurel Mellon. She's got a really great book, The Pathway. It's been out for a long, long time. The subtitle is How to Turn Off the Drive to Overeat, to Spend, to Overwork, Smoke, Drink Too Much, Rescue Others, Put Up Walls, Think Too Much, or People Please. So this is largely about addictions. And as Rhonda suggested, Laurel Mellon suggests that we go look for higher rewards, what she calls our life's sweetest fruit or sweetest rewards. Like integration, the sense of inner chaos is lessened and you feel whole. You accept yourself and know that you don't have to be perfect to be wonderful. You operate from balance. The extreme highs and lows are replaced by more balanced and stable emotional life. You have a sense of sanctuary. You have a nurturing inner voice and a warm, secure place within that's always there, no matter how difficult life becomes or whatever your challenges are. You can develop a sense of intimacy. Your relationships are more intimate. You can be close to another without merging, without distancing or controlled struggles. Love and desires deepen in that kind of intimacy. And then there's a state of vibrancy where the joy you take in being alive and the vitality that comes from better health and more balanced lifestyle shows. You look your best and feel radiant. And finally, there's a spirituality aspect where you experience a greater awareness of your inherent goodness, a deeper connection with the spiritual, and a new appreciation for the mystery and grace of life, as opposed to those common going for those common excesses of eating too much, chemical pleasures like drinking, smoking, drugs, and so on, overworking, busy all the time, overspending, excessive material focus, rescuing others, merging with other people emotionally and expecting too little, but trying to be the savior. And too much thinking, obsessive thinking, analyzing everything, getting it perfect, trying to control everything, and people pleasing, kind of the area of addiction to approval that Sean talks so much about. Fear of rejection, approval seeking, trying to be too good. So what I was thinking was, as he was working with Brittany at one point and suggestion that she consider how, can she love herself, and applying certain affirmations or hacks like, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable, and Sean suggests, well, and I love that. That's a very valuable tool, one that I use all the time. Many of you probably heard me repeat that I lean on is one of these days I'm going to look back on all this and laugh. So why not? Why wait? Why not go for it right now? Which is good, because that tends to, if you say, well, I'm feeling bad today, and I love that. That tends to build self-acceptance, and a lot of what I'm heading toward here in this is my notion that happiness, true happiness, and balance in reaching your higher fruit comes from what Albert Bandura titled self-efficacy expectation. It's the belief that I can. It comes from, it starts when the baby starts learning to walk. Baby starts to crawl away from mom, away from the safety of her arms and picks himself up, and he hobbles and walks his way back to his mom with a tremendous smile on his face. And hopefully his mom is there to reinforce it with a positive words and an effective, an affectionate touch and so on, which reinforces his desires to go out and learn some more. But at the same time, there's an inner pleasure, not just that mom accepted the fact that I took my first steps, but he's recognizing that he himself took those first steps. And so where I'm going with this, hopefully, for your inspection and adoption or rejection, is that in terms of dealing with addictive behaviors, whatever these horizontal things that Rhonda suggested that we don't really get satisfaction from, that there's essentially that there's a way, there's a process, there's the guide rails that Sean mentioned the other day. There's a pattern that we can learn to use so that not only when someone offers us praise or the suggestion that, yeah, you can do it, or we even tell ourselves in our own self-talk, yeah, I can do that. One of these days, I'm going to laugh at all this. Not only do we have that to motivate us and teach us how to do some things, but we can have a real a guideline to get over the speed bump that often when we're handed those hacks that work and help, that many times we don't really understand how or why they work. And what Laurel Millen did was recognize that just knowing something, intellectually knowing something, even intellectually just knowing the pattern that I'm going to share with you, is not going to make the difference. It helps, it's a starting point. But because the thinking brain is not ultimately in the totally in control, and the feeling brain, based on our old habits and the drunk monkey that's trying to help us survive based on the patterns, the habits and patterns that we developed early on that we thought were the best. We need to have some experiences, some emotional experiences. We have to impact the feeling brain. And that doesn't come just from insight or intellectual looking at things, but it starts with that. And what I wanted to suggest is that, in a sense, what I was hearing is Sean was effectively raising Brittany out of her state of depression, was that at the same time there was a speed bump that popped up in my mind. Yeah, she got raised out of this, but maybe she doesn't really know how she got raised out of it, and even maybe more important, how can she use what pattern can she rely on to get out of that kind of a situation with all kinds of future challenges that she might have. I say future challenges, most of which come up from our past, but what kind of addictive things that might come up. So I first need to talk a little bit about what is self-efficacy expectation that Albert Bandura talked about. And it's essentially your belief in your own abilities to deal with various situations, your belief that you can do things. And this is important because it plays such a tremendous role in not only how you feel about yourself, but whether or not you successfully achieve your goals. Maybe a more common word for self-efficacy expectation is confidence. And it's one of the most enabling psychological models that's ever been adopted into positive psychology. It's the optimistic self-belief in our competence or chances of successfully accomplishing a task and producing a favorable outcome. It's certainly worth having because, as Henry Ford famously put it, whether you can believe something that you can do something or you can't, you're right. And Gandhi perfectly understood the pivotal role that self-belief plays in our lives. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values ultimately become your destiny. Some psychologists rate self-efficacy or confidence above talent in the recipe for success. So they suggest we need to pay special attention to efficacy when setting goals to make sure that our efficacy beliefs or confidence are in line with our aims and not working against them. And we could have a whole discussion around that. But Albert identified some major sources of efficacy beliefs, and one of which, as Sean was leading Brittany to focus on, not necessarily on the how, but the why, or the feelings of joy or grace and things of that sort. He was right on target in the sense that the state that you're in will influence how you judge your self-efficacy, how it has an influence on your self-confidence. Depression, for example, can dampen confidence in your abilities. One definition of depression might be the belief that I can, or the belief that I can't or shouldn't change, the belief that I can't or shouldn't succeed. So stress reactions or tensions are interpreted as signs of vulnerability to poor performance, whereas positive emotions can boost our confidence in our skills. And just the other day, Sean, I believe it was with Brittany, engaged in a bit of what has been identified in the neurolinguistic programming world as the core outcome pattern, where you can look at how it is that you believe you need to do things, from one step to another, until finally you get to feel some state of joy or peace or oneness. And so Sean appropriately suggested, well, what if you just start with joy? And that's a very powerful tool. But if we go back to Albert's views of the sources of self-efficacy, part of it is, or one of them is, vicarious experiences, where seeing people similar to ourselves succeed in their sustained effort raises our beliefs that we too can possess the capabilities to master our activities. For example, if we're starting to market with the Me Loving More model, you may not have had a great deal of weight loss with a particular product, or you may not have had your pains disappear, or you may not have had a personal experience that you might hope for with the product that you're marketing. But the fact that you see other people have had that experience, you see other associates in your business succeeding in their business, tends to build a belief that you too can succeed. Secondly, our verbal persuasion, the self-talk that I've already suggested is somewhat. Being persuaded that we possess the capabilities to master certain activity means that we're more likely to put in the effort and sustain it when those problems arise. So therefore, self-talk. you know, I can, I will do it. And this comes in the form of speech acts, such as like the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. The evidence isn't there. We're declaring that it's true. We're declaring that, yes, I will succeed in the next quarter of this year to make so much money, whatever. Then there's imagined experiences that come into play. Visualizing yourself behaving effectively or successfully in a given situation, such as in sports performance. The studies that have shown that the basketball players that visualized making their shots without even being on the floor, compared to those who went out and actually practiced, has demonstrated that almost at least equally, or maybe in some cases, maybe even a little bit more successful, were those who successfully applied the visualization of their performance. But I want to come down to the one that stood out for me among Bandura's list was that even he and others have recognized as the most powerful source of self-efficacy is through mastery experiences. There's nothing more powerful than having a direct experience of mastery to increase self-efficacy. You know, if I go out and I make a bunch of calls to my prospects and I actually discover that, yeah, not everybody's going to, you know, bite my head off, and I'm actually going to have a fair number of yeses, and consciously recognizing that and attributing yourself credit for being able to achieve that success. This leads to a resilient sense of confidence or self-efficacy that creates the belief that you can overcome these obstacles through effort and perseverance. So that's kind of a brief rundown on self-efficacy or confidence from Albert Bandura's perspective. So what we need to get down to next is, given that just knowing that, how can we develop the emotional experiences that rewires the feeling brain so that when you're out of balance emotionally, productively, you can bring yourself back into balance without shopping horizontally and going out to food or alcohol or behaviors or, you know, whatever it is that has become an addiction. And so Laurel Mellon developed this pattern by which she suggests that with repeated cycles, this is the business of developing new habits. And habits require a certain amount of repetition and a certain amount of time, and it's going to be different for everybody. The whole 21 days to develop a new habit probably is a little short for most people, but it's entirely independent. I've known people that stopped smoking cold turkey and never, they wouldn't even go in a room where other people were smoking because their life was threatened by continuing to smoke. But here's the way that she suggests you deal with feelings such as Brittany suggested. Well, you know, how am I going to stop doing this worrying of about what I'm going to do next, even though I've had some financial success, removed some financial strain. How am I going to stop worrying about this? Now, I don't know what, let me see here. Is Brittany with us today?
I don't see her on here, Bob.
How about, is there anyone else that has a pattern of something that routinely bothers them that they'd like to deal with? It's been difficult to deal with, that they'd like a little help with. Monique, Michelle, Heather?
Shammy says she's got, so Shammy, are you someplace where you can chat with it and then go through a little workshop with Bob? And if not, that's okay too. Okay. Would you like to unmute yourself and come on down?
So he's
Okay,
asking,
now, I have one problem with Shammy. I love your kids and so on, but a lot of noise is not going to help us. So I don't know. I'll have to
Yeah.
ask.
they just woke up.
Yeah. Okay, so Shammy can follow on the quiet side.
Okay.
Anyone else like to go through and have an experience this morning? If your background's quiet, so that you can dive into yourself a little bit deeper without distraction. And
Michelle, how about you? Have you got something that?
Perfect. I was trying to figure out how to hit the raise hand button.
okay,
Funny how this all works.
Okay,
out.
great.
I am a shopping addict.
Okay, great. So, how do you know when you're feeling the drive to indulge in your addiction?
I get a rush, a pre-rush.
A pre-rush, okay. And so when can you identify the kind of situations you're in when that happens? What happens? What just happens before that?
That I have not been able to identify. Only feeling that I need something.
Okay.
To I'm assuming satisfy my mind, not my mind, but my feelings. Something like that. I don't necessarily feel down and out, depressed. Just a need for happiness, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I get a thrill out of shopping and looking for a deal.
Okay. Ultimately, when we get through the bottom of this, I'm going to emphasize that the most important part of this retraining of your brain and your habits is to create the habit of repeatedly asking yourself the basic questions again and again. How do I feel and what do I need?
Okay.
But I'll come back to that. But I'm asking that of you right at the moment because what Laurel Mellon would have you do is write out a thinking journal. When you sit down and think about your need to shop, and list the facts about what is upsetting, not the feelings, but what is upsetting that leads to you're having this compulsion to shop. So given we don't have pen and paper handy right at the moment, is there something, again, what is it? Can you identify what it is that is upsetting that's leading to this compulsion to shop? Is there anything that comes to mind?
No. And I guess that's why I've had the biggest struggle. But I've
Okay,
never tried to identify prior. I've never tried to identify triggers, so to speak.
okay,
And I also have a need for, I learned last week, more of an addiction or the need to feel approved by everyone else. So, I mean, obviously, I have what they call the addictive personality. So, and I didn't
Okay.
realize my approval. So I'm assuming that this will work for both.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So perhaps what you're suggesting is that what is upsetting is the need for approval from other people.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which actually could lead into my shopping addiction.
that's exactly where we're going.
Yeah.
And so step one in this process is when you recognize you've got a pattern, is to sit down and write out a thinking journal, listing just the facts, what's going on, what's happening, who's there, where are you, what happened maybe just the day before, or what happened, what do you anticipate happening in the future? What are the facts of the situation?
Okay.
All right. So now once we have the facts, the next thing to do is to go what she terms the expression of the natural flow of feelings by writing out, for example, when you're feeling the compulsion to shop. Oh, there's the birds. Write out, I feel angry that.
Okay.
When you're feeling compelled to shop, what are you angry about? And I recognize that I'm suggesting that you check some feelings that maybe you haven't been conscious of, and that's part of this process, is to uncover the feelings that are arising out of your old patterns.
And that makes sense, not acknowledging
Right.
feelings that I have.
So is there
that makes
anything you can say? I feel angry that maybe something like I feel angry that people don't accept me for who I am. Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had an instance last week with a teammate, a girl that's under me in my business, and I had offered to do some work for her, and then the requirements for me to help them, they didn't meet it, and she got, I mean, she still miffed me over a week later. And that's how I discovered last week with Rhonda that, I do have more of a need to have approval of others more than I thought I did.
Okay.
And in that instance, I felt like I was standing up for myself. I was holding my ground. And I kind of knew that she was going to get miffed either way, no matter what I did. So I felt like I was standing up for myself, but yet in my heart and deep down, it hurt me that I hurt her. But now she has her own issues, and that, I can't help her. And I understand that. But yet, I don't want to hurt someone.
Okay. So that
I
might
don't want to
fall.
be the reason that somebody is upset.
Okay. So what Mellon suggests is that we look at 4 basic feelings. I feel angry that, I feel sad that, I feel afraid that, and possibly I feel guilty that. So from
Guilty.
what you
I
just,
feel a lot of guilt.
okay, great. And from what you just said, I could imagine you might feel sad that you don't want to hurt someone else.
True.
Or maybe I feel afraid that if I do something different from what I normally do, I'll hurt someone else.
True. But I think it's more guilt. I think
Okay,
guilt
great.
is one that I have, I feel guilty that I have added to their problems. Does that make sense?
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Whatever makes
think
sense to you.
Well, and I think that guilt may go along with my shopping addiction too, because when you mentioned guilt, I'm like, it was like light bulb, you know?
Right. And for the most part, I think it's useful to remember that a lot of these addictions are what? They're covers for feelings that we don't want to necessarily feel when they pop up.
That
Right.
totally makes sense.
So-
Okay.
So what she suggests here is step number 2 is to write out these feelings of what you're angry, sad, afraid, or guilty about.
Okay.
So once you have that in place, she invites us to jump into what she calls the limit cycle. And this is by asking yourself the following questions. When you're in that situation with a person like that, what are my expectations here? What are you expecting to happen? What's the first thing that pops to your mind is, I'm expecting to hurt somebody. I'm expecting to, I don't know what,
Yeah. I'm expecting to hurt. I mean, I expected it.
Okay. Is there anything else that comes to mind about what you might be expecting to happen based on that feeling of interacting with that person?
Oops, sorry. Not offhand, but I would have to kind of like put myself back into the position where I was last week, but expecting to hurt someone, that was at the forefront of my mind. I mean,
Okay, great.
I knew it was inevitable.
Okay, great.
It was
Okay.
a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation,
Right.
really.
Okay, so, and there may be more, but that'll, for the purpose of illustrating how this process goes, that'll work fine. So the next question is, are my expectations reasonable?
That's a good one. In my eyes, yes. In their eyes, no. See, I worry about what and I need to stop them. I need to quit. I don't, but, and I say that and not in a cocky type scenario, but I do need to quit worrying about how other people are going to react and feel. And I'm sure that all goes along with everything that I'm addicted to, which I don't drink, but I do smoke, I do shop. And honestly, the reason I have found out that I'm afraid of success is because of my shopping addiction. I'm afraid that once the big money starts coming, that I'm going to blow it and not be able to control my shopping habit, and also my fear of approval from everybody else.
So here again, what you just illustrated is at the bottom of an addictive behavior is sort of the depression that arises out of saying, I don't think I can.
Yes, the depression, you nailed it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is it. I don't
And-
want to
and-
go back into any depressed state. Yes, that's it.
And so to get out of that, I got to do something to change my mood, change my state,
Yes.
change my focus.
Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
So, but if you go inside yourself and identify what is reasonable for yourself at that time, in other words, is asking yourself, is it reasonable? Is it a reasonable expectation that, or is it reasonable for me to expect that I will hurt that person? And maybe embedded in that is it a reasonable expectation that I can't do anything else but?
Yeah. No, that's a good way to phrase it. Yeah.
So is there a part of you that says that, well, maybe that's not so reasonable?
Yeah, there definitely is.
Okay. So in answering that question and writing it out, hopefully,
Writing it out's going to be the key for me. I
I
never
think so.
thought about that.
And that's why I'm offering this up, because this pattern, as opposed to just feeling good for the moment because we adopted an affirmation that, well, I love myself and I can do anything I choose to, if I
Right.
really want to. In the moment, unless you do that a number of times to the point where your amygdala gets it, that, you know, you really believe it and your feeling brain shifts. Just encountering that once in a while from a therapist or whoever it isn't going to make the change. This is a pattern to be used repeatedly
Yeah.
until your feeling brain gets it. Okay.
Okay. That
And
makes
it's
sense.
just like, I want to suggest that it's like, you know, most all of us know how to maybe make pancakes. Okay. We go into the kitchen and we grab a bowl and we grab the pancake mix and some oil and some eggs and whatever. And without thinking about it, pretty soon we got the pancake batter whipped up and it's plopping on the griddle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get to the point where you use this process without thinking about it. It's just natural. It becomes an automatic knee-jerk response to dealing with a feeling that brings you down, that doesn't put you above the line of balance.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the next question to ask in this limit cycle, is my thinking positive and powerful? What would I say to myself that would be positive and powerful and that would encourage, inspire, or support my new reasonable expectation? Is there something that I could think in a positive way? It's positive thinking. Call it what it is.
Well, for the money, for the shopping part of it, it definitely is the saving the money and doing what I truly want to do with it.
Okay, so so put that say that another way. You know, what would you say to yourself that that represents thinking positively and powerfully about reasonable expectations?
Having the funds, having the extra funds set aside to open the facility will be more rewarding, actually,
Okay,
than going shopping.
right. Okay. So,
But okay, now help me with this one though. But now with the teammate that I know I'm going to tick off one way or the other, and I feel like I am taking a stand for myself and doing what works best for me, how I guess I don't understand, like, what would a sentence be for that situation?
okay, and that goes to the next question.
Okay.
And that is, what is my essential pain? In other words, what is the reality of life and the truth of the human condition that I need to recognize and accept in this moment? What must I face to follow through with reasonable expectations as a mature adult? What is the story that I'm telling myself about that good, bad, or indifferent? Is that good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah.
For
it's
example,
indifferent.
you might identify as the essential pain in that I'm not in complete control. Someone will reject me.
Yeah.
I can't always get my way. I really am alone. If it's going to be, it's up to me. So when you ask yourself and answer that question, what is my pain in this? And you stay with those words, the feeling associated with them will first rise and then fade away. And this is the beginnings of where you're impacting your feeling brain with a new response.
And for my need for approval from others, that is key for sure.
Okay, so what would you say is the reality of life for you in that situation? What is it you need to recognize, that if you're thinking more powerfully and positively about what is a reasonable expectation in relating to that person, what kind of a little bit of a, pain pops up for you about that? What's going to be a little bit difficult to recognize, but if you give it a chance to bubble up.
Well, my first thought when you was reading that question was, it's either myself at pain or them at pain. And I always choose to take on the pain and alleviate it from others. But when you're in business, you can't do that. You have to make a more solid decision, and you cannot worry about the feelings of others. So, I mean, deep down inside, I know that from a business standpoint, it was the best decision.
What about
And
from a personal emotional health standpoint for you?
well, in that situation, it's either me or them that's going to hurt. And I kind of evaluate quickly, I guess, who's going to hurt worse at that moment, me or them.
Mhm.
And I have always, and that just since the first of the year, am I trying to stand up for myself and alleviate a lot of my pain. And that's the reason I did what I did in making that decision and sticking to it. But
And
I have to stop trying to take on everybody else's pain.
okay, because you're not in complete control of them.
Correct.
You can't always get your way.
Correct.
And if it's going to be healthy for you, it's up to you to do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There are many reasons why, even physically, let alone emotionally and everything else, but also physically, it affects me. So I kind of feel like I have a double whammy when I take on other people's pain because of my health conditions. Not only do I suffer physically, but then I suffer emotionally as well. And
Okay,
I need to start putting myself first and thinking of myself. And I
Okay.
mean, when I say no to others, not rude and all that, I think everyone understands that, but I do need to, it's time for me to stand up for me and do what works for me instead of everyone else first.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you might not find some great strategies for relating to that person, even though you have to differ with them.
Right.
But the point is to identify what is that pain that pops up that keeps the old addiction in place. And then you want to ask, well, what is the earned reward? What is the payoff? If the pain is that I'm not perfect, the reward could be something like, gee, I don't have to be perfect.
You just nailed it. Because I feel like I have to be perfect for others or to others. That's exactly it.
And that goes back to the question, is that a reasonable expectation of yourself?
And it's not.
So,
and I need to let go of that.
And so what is a more positive thought that you could have around the idea that I don't have to be perfect?
That it's okay.
Great.
For me, it's short, sweet, and simple. It's okay.
Okay, that essentially is the limit cycle.
Okay.
The fourth step is what she calls the nurturing cycle. And this is where you ask yourself, what do I need? If I knew one thing that I might need, it might be, and this is where we're using the sentence stem completion can be a great help. If I knew one thing that I need, it might be, and write out 5 endings just as fast as they come to your mind.
Okay.
So what's a couple that pop into your mind right away? If I knew one thing that I need in all of this, what would it be?
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is I need for others to be happy like I am,
Okay.
which I can't control that. And that's something I've got to learn.
Right. And so ultimately, what that suggests is that ultimately you're going to want to go through this, through that limit cycle again and consider, is that a reasonable expectation?
Exactly. Because it's not. I mean, I can't expect anyone else to be as happy as I am. I can't expect them to be anything but themselves, at their, whatever their stage in the game is.
Right. And so answering, what do I need? And do I need support? And answering, like, one way I might really like support is some friends willing to discuss this whole issue with me. Or one
Well,
way
and that's
I might
funny.
really like support is to be acknowledged by people who think like I do. I don't know.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because I always want people to understand where I'm coming from and the reasons why I do things. They don't need to know. No, and half the time I'm sure they don't even care. Like I try to explain myself
Yeah,
with
but
valid reasons on why my decisions are what they are. And I need to stop that. I don't know anyone anything, but yet I feel I want understanding from the other person.
and that's part of this, part of the need for approval addiction part of this.
Yeah, and that just totally just blew my mind when I thought I'm always explaining myself as to why I do what I do because I want them to understand. And it's not for me to get them to understand.
Bob, let me throw just something in here to help
Absolutely.
Michelle a little bit. Michelle, here's something I want you to hear as you're going through this process.
Okay.
You are hearing all of this incredible step-by-step process to advance to another place. You're still here, and this is the reality. Until you walk through this exercise, you're still hearing all of these great ideas from the current mindset.
True.
So
From your logical mind.
yes. So
True.
where you're at right now and how excited you are to hear about all of these awakenings is going to require that next step of doing the work, because the part of your brain that's hearing this is the one that's going, wait a minute, they're holy mackerel, they're finding our hiding spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the part of you that wants to get over this is saying, this is awesome.
Yeah. You're exactly right. I mean, I know that it's not going to change today just because I'm learning all this. I mean, I legit am going to have to write this.
As you hear this and the questions you're coming up and the awakenings are happening still from yesterday's state of mind.
Gotcha.
That's now being awakened, because part of this addictive personality is going to be beating yourself up that you should have known this. I've already heard a couple of statements that you're beating yourself up already. You didn't know this.
You're exactly right. I am. I mean, I feel bad.
Exactly. So that's part of the addictive behavior. So sit in that, enjoy, and go, oh my gosh, this is the first time this stew has come together. I've had all the ingredients, but the stew hasn't cooked yet. Bob is teaching you the recipe. Bob is saying, put all of these things into the bucket and then do the work.
Gotcha.
And do it repeatedly until you're cooked.
Until it sinks in and like you had mentioned earlier, like it becomes the habit, like the knee-jerk reaction. I have to do the work until it's that knee-jerk reaction.
Because I just kept hearing the second you get off this phone, you're going to go buy something, because it's like, I should know all of this. I don't want you to do that.
No, I have learned a lot with my shopping addiction and how to avoid going to the store or online, whatever.
And that's where
as far as with people, that's going to be key.
That's why I suggested at the beginning that I would come down to this final statement that the most important part of this retraining is to create the habit of repeatedly asking yourself again and again, how do I feel and what do I need? Because that's the trigger that will, and also what is the story I'm telling myself, as Sean has
Yeah. Yeah.
exhibited many days in this whole year of trainings. But that's that. How do I feel and what do I need is the trigger that will lead you, once you build the habit, to going through this process of writing out a thinking journal. And eventually you'll get to the point where it'll be written on the tablet in your mind. But
Right.
when you write out what's the facts here, well, my bank account is low, and we're getting near the end of the month, and whatever, those are the kind of facts. Then
Yeah.
what are the feelings? Well, I'm angry that I'm not making enough money. I feel
Yeah.
sad that I haven't learned as much as I wished I had, that would enable me to make more money. I'm afraid that if I don't make more money, I don't know, I won't be able to help somebody that I really love. Or I
Right.
feel guilty that, gee, I should have done better in the
Up
past years.
until this point.
Right.
Exactly. And then I
And
beat myself up.
And then you start to go into the limit cycle. What are my expectations here? Is it realistically, is it a realistic thing to expect that, and asking, are my expectations reasonable? Is what I'm expecting here sensible, reasonable? And if not, what might that trigger that's more reasonable? Is my thinking positive and powerful? What am
Now,
I
I
saying
do-
to myself?
Now, I do feel that, and this is where I beat myself up, I do feel my expectations are set to where they are reasonable. And when I don't, or when I fall back, or for me, I mean, I guess that there's no other way to put it. For me, I feel like I made a mistake and I beat myself up for it.
Okay,
And
so
that's something I need to learn to stop beating myself up.
So given your understanding that happens repeatedly, are those expectations reasonable? Those former expectations really reasonable?
Well, I think they are. Maybe they're not. No, they are. They are. I just allow my feelings to hinder in, or creep in, and at that moment I decide to, shop versus saving. I mean, I do feel my expectations of, from a financial standpoint, are reasonable. Now, my expectations with working with others and relationships, yeah, maybe definitely not.
Okay, yeah, you may have to break it out into different expectations and different intentions. And then, you get to the point where you recognize, well, if I adopted a more reasonable expectation and think about a more positive output, result or outcome, what would you have to say to yourself that's positive and powerful about having that outcome? So that's the positive thing that you could come up with. And then you have to identify what's the pain involved. If I adopt a new position with regard to that associate of mine, that friend of mine, or whoever, and I have to behave a little differently in my relationship with that person, what's the reality of life that's going to pop up that's not going to be quite so comfortable? Maybe they're going to reject me or reject my ideas at the moment, or that I won't be able to persuade them in some way or another. And once you identify what that feeling is, then you can go on to consider, what is the earned reward? What would be the blessing of life received by following through? If the pain is, I'm not perfect, the reward could be, I don't have to be perfect.
True. And I don't have to please others.
Right. So then finally you come down to the fourth step is, if that's the case, what do I need to make that outcome a more reasonable outcome, a reality? Who do I need support from? Who is it reasonable for me to get support from?
Okay.
What kind of support is reasonable?
Ah, that's a good one.
So a lot of this comes down, I think, to the idea that, and this is where I started thinking about it the other day, that I kind of thought of, if I had a title for this presentation, I'd call it The Joy of Competence. We didn't really talk about competency. There's like 4 different kinds of competence. There's unconscious incompetency, where you're totally unaware that you don't know what you don't know about. There's conscious incompetency, where you're aware that you don't know about something or how to do something. Then there's consciously competent, where you're aware that you do know about something or how to do something. And finally, there's that unconsciously competent, where you're unaware that you know how you're doing what you're doing, but you're doing everything great. Well, I thought about it, and for me, happiness really, in line with Albert Van Der's views of self-efficacy, expectation, or confidence, the most of it comes from consciously competent. The baby recognizing that not only does mom like it that I got up and walked for the first time in my life, but I like it that I was able to. And I'm consciously aware that I can. So what I'm hoping is that, to the extent that any of you can adopt this as a tool, that it becomes a tool by which you can say, yeah, I have addictive habits. I do this, I do that. And a lot of it I do maybe unconsciously, a lot of it I'm aware of and I don't like about myself. But I have a tool now by which I can become competent and like myself for doing so in dealing with an addictive behavior, addictive compulsion or drive that comes out of having to learn how to deal with my feelings when I was younger. So that's pretty much what I have to offer. And I have a little outline of this that for anyone who's really interested, if you want to email me, I'll be happy to send you a copy of it. I would heartily recommend, if you ever get a chance to read The Pathway by Laurel Mellon. It's a pretty, it's a lot of stuff to go through, but this is the essence of it, and it's what I distill down to use for myself. And I'll be happy to share that with.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me. I mean, it's definitely eye-opening.
What's your sense of the way you feel about yourself at the moment? I'm
I
curious.
feel good. I mean, I feel okay in a good sense. That
Now, okay is just kind of a, that's like bronchitis. The doctor says you got bronchitis. Well, that doesn't tell you much about what's causing the bronchitis. It just tells you your lungs are irritated and inflamed. So when you say you feel okay, can you give me more details about how okay you feel?
Sure.
More
I feel
specifically.
okay. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I feel okay about myself that I'm not doing anything wrong in that sense. You know, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just the way I am at this moment. And, you know, I'm learning tools to change.
And what's your expectation of your chances of change at the moment?
110%. I mean, I feel that I can change. Now that I know processes to work through and things to look for, to identify, I feel really good and confident that not necessarily it's going to be easy, but the process is easy.
Great.
But when I say I feel okay about it, I feel like I've realized that it's, like I said, it's not a matter of right or wrong. The perfection part, you know, I'm not perfect. And this is all just a process of learning, and it's all good.
Well, I'm satisfied. What I'd love to have you do is give us a report down the line whenever it feels interesting for you to do so. See what you notice about it.
I sure will. I sure will. And I
Well,
appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages of notes. So a lot of great information. Michelle, I'm going to encourage you a couple of things today.
Okay.
One, find yourself a way to give yourself a gift without it being shopping for opening up through this, because the part of you that opened up to this is the one that is asking for this information. The part of you that once outside of this community will start to put you back into that bad state of feeling.
Okay.
On the fall. Part of the reward was, you mentioned it earlier, is what's going to happen when I get the big money.
Exactly.
I would encourage you to, right now where you're at, reward yourself with something as simple as a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, reviewing these notes, spend a time in a minute of deep breathing, spend a moment of time looking out the window saying, this is the joy that today brought me. Find a way to help convert some of this great knowledge and adjust it to the feelings that upon implementing this simple and 110% committed conversation, so that it sticks with you.
Okay. I sure will.
Because the key to this is with the feeling brain, right? The amygdala has been set aside, has been put on call notice, because this is a change of pattern. The brain looks for 2 things: will it kill me, or how fast can I recognize it? You recognized all of these patterns and expectations and all of the forward questions and all of that information, but doing things differently is a change in pattern. The brain wants to go back to the pattern that was. This isn't something that came up yesterday, and it's not something that may be gone by tomorrow. So it's going to take constant effort. So I would encourage you, go back, watch the recording, go through the exercises, pause the video, go through the exercises. This is, if you were to guess how long this situation of compulsive purchasing and soothing discomfort by having an addiction someplace else, how long do you think that's been going on?
Oh, at least 30 years. The shopping's been going on at least 30 years.
So-
And the need for approval, I'm sure, since I was a child.
So all of that to say, the simple method that was described is now going to require you to go to battle.
Yeah.
And in understanding that every time you do something in this activity, in this exercise, find a way to simply reward yourself. Could say, you know what? I did that. I did that for me.
You know, that's the essence of the message I was trying to convey, is that from Bandura's views on confidence, that when you successfully accomplish something, even if it's just a little step, that adds to your self-confidence and to your joy and happiness in life by just as long as you take the time to recognize that, yeah, I did that. That was because I made a choice, and it was a successful choice. And as those add up, as those build up over time, you get stronger and stronger and stronger until you no longer consider shopping horizontally for the goofy stuff that doesn't really reward us. So taking action on it, even a little bit at a time, as it adds up.
So Michelle, how are you feeling right now?
I feel really good. And immediately I'm recalling different situations where I have succeeded in this, not knowing what I was doing, like going into a store and saying no. But immediately I thought, oh my gosh, I can remember going into stores in the last couple of weeks, and it is a mental process for me to say no. And it's like, I ask myself all these questions, and with people as well. And it's weird though, because like some people you don't care. I hate to say this, but there's some people I don't care if I upset them or not, But I feel good about all of it, and knowing that I can go through a process prior to or immediately after is right up my alley. And identifying is going to be key for me. I mean, I feel good overall about it. I mean, I know it's going to take work, but that's okay. In the end, it's definitely going to be worth it. I will be more at peace and a genuine happiness.
So
Well, I thank you for sharing, Michelle. I appreciate your participation. That's great.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, Michelle. So there you go, folks. Pretty amazing conversation. I'm sure a lot of you gained value and benefit from it. And that's why we record these things, because there's some deep exercises that go on along with this conversation. So I want to thank Mr. Bob Parks for his continuous learning and absorption of the community, and always bringing value and sharing back into the community with simple sentences and simple questions to full-blown exercises like this. So Bob, love you, brother. Appreciate you much.
My pleasure.
And there you go. What an amazing Sunday. I'm glad I was here.
I put my email address in the chat if anyone wants a copy of the
rjparks123@cox.net. There you go, folks. Have an amazing Sunday. Hey, tomorrow morning, we're back at 6:30 a.m. 6:30 a.m. We're going to have some conversations, and be ready to have this be your best month of the year right now, the best month of the quarter, because we're going to go into some conversations about building your business, helping build people, finding how to create retention, how to build your success. And don't be surprised if you hear some of today's conversations throughout the rest of the month. I appreciate you so much. I'm Sean Murphy, founder of Mental Profits, and I'll see y'all where? At the next event. Hey, say bye to each other and say, I love you.
Take
Bye,
care,
guys.
everyone. Have a wonderful day. Love you all.
Love you guys.
Guys, love you.
Love you guys.
Love you guys. Thank you so much for
Bye. Love you
everything.
guys.
Love you tons.